Gundam Wing had a profound effect on both the anime industry in America and on a little 12-year-old prof back in the day. And one of the big things was the advent of the idea of pacifism as a big thing that everybody could do. Now, as a pacifist myself, and who was one of them way back when and continues to be to this day, it had a rather profound effect on me personally. So regardless of what your personal take on pacifism may be, I'm sure some of you don't rightly know what it is or have been dope smacked into thinking it's cowardice or whatever. Let's make sure we know what we're talking about. Pacifism, broadly speaking, is the belief that war and violence is bad. Shocker, right? But yes, that does include a just war. Yes, that also includes the death penalty. The point is that one takes a moral stand against violence of most or all forms. This has been a large part of Mennonite theology, which is where I take most of my understanding of it, and incidentally, let me tell you, that was real fun to have as part of your background when the Iraq and Afghan wars started. Absolute or total pacifism is a belief that all life is precious and that taking it even in self-defense, is morally and otherwise unjustifiable, which is what Relina Peacecraft is pushing and what technically happens over the course of the series. So it worked out just peachy, right? How could they have gotten something wrong? When you have a world where there are giant robots that can cut battleships in half, you better hope that you got a lot of people real interested about not killing each other anymore. Now, don't get me wrong, I adore Gundam Wing, but it also spends a lot of time on the philosophical battlefield to mixed success. So let's take a look at what philosophically and practically would be necessary to nix warfare and interpersonal violence entirely. Those two are surprisingly intertwined, you might be interested to know. A lot of violence on both the micro and macro scale stems from wealth inequality. Now, assuming that Gundam Wing's universe, which is majority white except for Chinese and Arabs in all caps, has eliminated racism for the most part. It then has to deal with the problems of wealth. When you have massive income inequality, like we have in the real world, people who aren't making enough to get by will sometimes turn to violence. Likewise, when you have people on the other end of the spectrum, the Jeff Bezos and Koch brothers of the world, they tend to sink money into weapons and the like, both to enforce their hegemony or otherwise band together against the rest of us by buying governments. The Rockefeller Foundation in Gundam Wing is just one of those things, which is treating warfare like some sort of aristocratic game, quoth the series. Eat the rich, everybody. So since we can see that wealth inequality has skyrocketed to levels not seen since guillotines were in vogue, or, last Monday, the world has not overturned the whole money problem. That means that we have people of ludicrous means funding and fueling wars, while those at the bottom of the pile, people like Duo, for example, have to resort to strange or drastic measures to get by. Or hop in a mobile suit to fuck shit up. So when Relina, also a rich heiress to a kingdom who clearly never knew anything but privilege in her life, a literal princess by the way, comes along and says, let's stop all the fighting, it rings kind of hollow. Not that the idea is wrong, by the way, but because she's lacking a lot of critical things to maintain it. What she's really pushing for is disarmament, which is not pacifism in the traditional sense, and she's pushing it on the global scale in the middle of a global war. Bad timing, sweetheart. She's also in a position where she's not coming to grips with the reality of the situation she's in. Well, it's admirable for the Sank Kingdom to stand against violence, and probably wise to do so, and I'm sure there's some sort of protocol to be declared officially neutral, like with Sweden, for example. She's also seemingly going out of her way to make herself a target in a lot of cases. Again, Relina, great philosophe, not that bright. Because she has not come to grips adequately with the realities of poverty in even her own nation, having spent most of her life going from one super rich private school to another, she's not intellectually prepared to deal with the fact that not everybody is going to want to be on board with what she has to say because it's not tenable to them. The nature of empire and governance tends to lean towards having to be armed, even in a self-defense force sort of manner, which ends up happening under Relina's nose, much to her distress. So how do you make a pacifist nation? Well, leading by example, but that's a tree planted that you will never sit under. Relina thinks she can just flip the script in one go, which is somewhat pie in the sky, but admirable all the same. The big problem with what Gundam Wing gets wrong about pacifism is that it's something you can just do. And if it weren't for the fact that the plot demanded that it happened, it would not have gone properly. What's the plan for getting everybody else on board? What's her plan for when some scuzzbucket thinks he's gonna start some shit? Obviously, they can't conceptually erase violence from the public consciousness, especially after that massive-ass war they just had. Kind of what Endless Waltz was getting at, incidentally. This brings me to sort of the big problem point with this. Pacifism is an ongoing ideal. I don't really think that it's something you can make the whole world do in one fell swoop. A lot of people aren't prepared for their own demise for the sake of an ideal, and certainly not in this heathen world. I would argue that a lack of faith-based pacifism dooms it to be an ideal that starry-eyed kids will talk about, but fail to realize what it takes to maintain it on a macro scale. Faith-based pacifism is something that I personally think is more sensible and perpetuating, but then not everybody is going to get in line and start reading H.S. Bender and Alan Kreider, you know? Lacking what I believe to be a core facet of this ideal, what hope does this gentle world have against the next autocrat with a big bankroll and a chip on their shoulder? And here's the thing about pacifism. You might get killed anyway. That's what Relina does get right. She is seemingly fully aware that she might die trying to get this done. She may stand up for non-resistance and pacifism, but she almost gets killed multiple times just trying to talk people down. And that's part of the call. To paraphrase Mother Teresa, we're called to be faithful, not effective. Pacifism will get you killed. And while other people might turn up their noses at that, what matters more than your life is your ideal, or in the case of me and mine, our faith. But, you know, there is hope. Police agencies around the world don't carry firearms. Some countries banned them altogether, and it's been effective. There's not no hope. We just have to have bespoke understandings of what success looks like. It's a process, like anything else in the world. And luckily for us, we don't have mobile suits to deal with before we can get warfare out of our systems. The globe turns, and still we strive. This is Professor Otaku, the greatest American anime critic, signing off. But I think it's really good that Gundam Wing tried to come to grips with the idea, if for no other reason than it brought something new to the table. And it certainly affected me as a young pacifist growing up to kind of see it in action in a cartoon that I otherwise like to watch. Like, it spoke to me personally, and as I've grown older and I've taken a look at the way it operates, I appreciate it for what it tried to do, but I can also see the massive flaws in the system that they've failed to deal with. But if nothing else, it serves as a blueprint for how you can kind of make it work in the grand scheme of things. But unfortunately, Wing, for all the good it does, it just doesn't quite get there like it thinks it should. But again, it is a process, and I think that more series should deal with the idea of pacifism and kind of show what it looks like in action. I don't think the state of the world is one that will accept it in mainstream media, so one more thing we have to think about, I guess. At the end of the day, Gundam Wing tried something really interesting and different, and I feel like in the current anime industry, they don't like the idea of new and different. I don't know if we'll ever see a show that tries to exhibit pacifism like this again, but if we do, I will certainly be watching and judging, because that's what I'm good at. If you don't know all that much about Mennonite theology, I highly recommend just looking up a few books by H.S. Bender and the recently departed Alan Kreider, who I was good friends with in life and greatly miss and admire. There are plenty of resources that you can look at to try and get a better understanding of it. Though, knowing the nature of the internet comment section, it's probably going to be like, lol, pacifism for losers, blip, blip, blip. And you will be summarily deleted if you drop that kind of comment, but I'm sure you knew that already, right?